Hello VC. Today I was very excited by an email I got from Bleep. Bleep is the website mail order from the emanating from the British label called the Warp. Warp, the indie label, the electronic music label by so many standards. And they announced a program of reissues of Seafield. The other day I was talking with Alex Motoric 247 about the need of a reissue of Seafield's first album, but this time it's the latter albums that are getting reissued. And Seafield is such an important band to me. It was really the band that tricked me into getting into electronic music, despite it being somehow a rock and roll band, or indie. They started out on Too Pure being the label that launched the career of PG Harvey, Mouse and Mars, Stereolab, and a few others. And this is the EP, the first Seafield EP, More Like Space. This is the generic sleeve from early Too Pure, and they were just alternating in the color depending on how they wanted to press the vinyl. So I don't know what that color is, but it's pretty cool. And this is from '93, and I remember listening to this for the first time in '93, or 15 years old, and getting this. Let's see. So Seefeel is a 4-piece band, which includes mostly Mark Clifford. Some of Seafield records only include Mark Clifford, actually. Sarah Peacock, who's still with the band, the singer of the band, and she plays instruments as well. And as well, Justin Fletcher and what's his name? Darren Seymour. Yeah. On this EP, you will also find Mark Van Unn, more known as Locust. And he's been in collaboration with them in various degrees throughout the years, at least for a good decade, and even later. So it is kind of, there's a galaxy of bands around Seafield. Slowdive is not too far away, as Neil Halstead collaborated with Sarah Peacock, Mark Van Unn, and some others. But what was really revolutionary for me in this is that at first, as it's a wall of guitar noise, it is very much indeed post My Bloody Valentine music, post Loveless, because My Bloody Valentine is not just Loveless, unfortunately. But as much as I really like Loveless, I struggle to say I love it, because there's some songs I love and some and even the ones I love always felt kind of a little bit precious to my personal taste. And when Seafield arrived, when there was already talk about like when is the next My Bloody Valentine album coming, and we were hearing about how uninspired Kevin Shields was, how the leader of My Bloody Valentine, how he didn't really want to do the same record over and over, and he really didn't understand what was the next step for him. I guess he was also very much enamored or into the burgeoning electronic scene in the UK. Not the techno scene, but the stuff like Aphex Twin, Ottaker, etc. Which is where Seefeel comes in, because this is exactly what My Bloody Valentine should have done if they kept on an ascending curve. of what was natural, a natural evolution of their sound. So when I was listening to this, like a guitar, bass, singing, indie, yeah, I'm listening to rock. And back then I was like, I don't really feel electronic music yet, and not much more reggae, dub. And as you can hear, this is basically dub with lots of electronic treatments, like looping of the guitar, and this is just wonderful. And they followed it, their feral voices, of course. This was followed by the Plain Song EP. So you can imagine the vinyl is white. And pretty soon, an EP of remixes by Sign Bubble, which is Mark Van Un and his co-conspirators in the band Auto Creation, Tara and Hector or something, Tara Peterson. And on the other side, 2 remixes by Aphex Twin, which is kind of the lead to something that was soon to come. And that came their first album. One of the absolutely most important albums of the 90s in my opinion, and many people who actually, the few people or the people who heard this is basically what we're listening to, but a step further. And Kike, which apparently means shit in Welsh, some slang. And this was, one of the most inspiring album for me for many years in the perspective of making music of my own. Right before this was released, this is a little bit for the VC, the nerdy part of it. This came out, or this didn't come out actually. This is only like a 5 copies test press of the first album, which came. There's like a promo sheet explaining that there is 1 track on this that didn't end up on the album, on the the commercially released album, and 3 or 4 tracks that are appearing in different mixes and different lengths. So this is kind of if you're a collector of Seefeel, like, why would you want to be that? Like, the music is enough in a way, but that was such an important band for me that when I heard about the existence of this, I tracked this for years, for at least a good decade. And a good buddy of mine in the US, who I lost track with Emmett Ramirez. We were fantasizing about this, and somehow he managed to get this on, I believe it was on an auction on eBay. And of course I was second on this. And a few years later he was selling it and I got this from him. And pretty fantastic. But why are we talking about Seafield again? Because there's a program of reissues of the stuff that was issued a little later on Warp. Seafield, remixed by Aphex Twin. Of course, there was like a logical progression. So first came this EP, 10-inch EP, Fracture and Tide. And and this is quite brutal, like very rhythmical. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe this came out, these 2 EPs came out before their second album. The Stare Through EP, this is, in my opinion, the best Seafield record because of a track called Spangle, which we will be listening to, I guess, right now. There's a remix of that track that got unreleased for years, and I've talked about it recently in another video, the Autechre remix, because Seafield did a couple of remixes for Autechre on the only record released by Autechre with remixes by other people, because Autechre are the remix masters. But their first EP for Warp the Basket triple 10-inch box set. This features, I believe, 2 remixes by Seafield, maybe just one, yeah, 1 remix by Seafield. So, as was common courtesy back then, you did a remix for someone, this person did a remix for you. But the remix by hten got unreleased until 2003, when hten were invited to curate the Altumor's Party Festival in England, and they invited Mark Clifford to perform solo. This was the the compilation of the festival, which features, of course, a track by hten, one by Baby Ford, Mark Blue, Stasis, Earth, Jim O'Rourke, Masters of Illusion, which is Cool Keith, Anthony Shake Shakir, and this Jekta, which is Mark Clifford from Seafield. But so that track, he released it as a CD that he self-distributed during the festival. Everyone who went to him and asked him if he had some merch, he had this to sell, which got reissued recently on the compilation that I featured on a recent video. But now, this remix plus these 2 EPs are getting reissued as a double LP by Warp in just about a month or so. Which is, if you don't have this, or the compilation with the remix by hten, this is a must-have. This is absolutely a must-have of crucial 90s indie, shoegaze, electronic Seafield. This might become the second best Seafield release in my opinion. Soon after that was released Secours. I only got this, it's a double LP, it's the white label, test press. This is much more rhythmical. There's a track on this called, I think it's a track called Vex, I'm not sure. Really, really good. Quasi-industrial. Metallic. More difficult. I like it, but it's probably only my 3rd favorite Seafield album out of only 4. Then Seafield self-released this white label with alternate versions of this track, no, of a track B-side of this EP, and 2 tracks from the first album. This was pretty elusive, and then they released this album on Reflex, which is Aphex Twin's own label, in 1996. Way more abstract. You still got Seefeel, but it's almost only ambient. There's no rhythm, no drums by then. And I believe, even if it's credited as produced by Seafield, I believe it is Mark Clifford by himself. If you go skip 14 years later, out of nowhere, Seafield re-emerged with this EP on Warp, back on Warp. I believe it was because of the celebration of the 30th anniversary of Warp. There was lots of celebration, tours, and I guess that's how the owner of Warp convinced Mark Clifford to continue to start again or to release new stuff. What's interesting is that Sarah Peacock came back, the singer and guitar player, bass, guitar. This EP was followed by this album, which is nice, but I wouldn't say that the magic is gone, but it is more interesting than magic as the previous Seafield releases. But so Secours, which I just showed you, yeah, the white label. This will get reissued also as a double LP, but no, as a triple LP with third album of unreleased tracks. I believe I counted 6 tracks, maybe even more. But I saw that like 2 tracks of these, like no, 1 track of these was actually issued on this 10-inch box set issued by Warp like 10 years ago or so, which featured an unreleased track by Seafield, which will end up being in this expanded reissue of Secours. So a whole album of unreleased tracks. Yeah, there's also this track for the 10th anniversary of Warp. They did a compilation of some of the catalog remixed by various people, and there is a Seafield remix on this that is exclusive to this. But then the third reissue expanded will be Shivox, the third album on Reflex, now issued on Warp, and featuring a whole album of unreleased tracks from the same area, more ambient, but with this harmonic system of lush drones that is so unique to Seafield. Of course, Seafield doesn't exist in a vacuum. We talked about the influence of My Bloody Valentine in a way. There's also this band, the Cocteau Twins. This EP, Otherness, is 4 tracks produced, remixed by Mark Clifford, recycled by Mark Clifford. This was released in 1995, so right before this Shivox, and they were opening for Cocteau Twins on the I think American tour, and Simon Remond, of course, found huge similarities between what they were doing. So much so, actually, that I think, Mark Clifford had a project produced by Simon Remond, or on his label, Bella Union, called Sneakster. There's a few EPs and an album. The only one on vinyl is this one. So it's more like, it sounds kind of like Cocteau Twins with a Seefeel angle. It's pretty nice. Not essential, but it's a good record. But under that time, of course, Mark Clifford, he wasn't silent, inactive. He was, he was doing, he had this side project called Disjecta, which is more him doing the same thing as Seafield, but without guitars. There's an album with amazing artwork released on Warp, with like metallic inks that reveal the artwork in different ways, especially on this side. This is a little harder music, but very, very nice. Then there's a two-part EP of Disjecta, also very, very nice artwork, also on Warp. And then a few collaboration production for this band, Vendor Refill. Also quite some stuff he did with Miracalix. He did co-produced this EP, or some track on this, Miss Meteo. This EP features an exclusive Boards of Canada remix as well, so that might have been his most famous release. This Miracalix album also. Miracalix, it was a mainstay of Warp in the mid-late 90s. She used to work for Warp and was in a relationship also at one point with one of the guys of Altecker. And she was probably the first ambient artist on Warp, even if ambient is selling it short. There was also a few remixes that Mark Clifford did under that name. We have one for Bowery Electric. This is a white label. I'm not sure it came out on vinyl apart from as a test press white label. This features also a remix by Shazm, which is the Robert Hampson from Loop. Bowery Electric, very good, like dark dub shoegaze, American. And one of my best buddies released this compilation on his label Schematic with a remix by Disjecta, or a track by Disjecta. I'm not sure I remember. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Anyways, and another early connection. Mark Clifford also was part of one of the early Locust Records, Sky Split. Pretty good. He also had recently, at the same time he was doing Disjecta, this EP came out on Warp. There was a series of 1,000 copies limited edition EPs with no information on who was who, and everyone suspected this was Aphex, which we learned later on it wasn't. This is kind of strange, not strange, but pretty good drum and bass, but pretty, yeah, that's when Mark Clifford was being interested in rhythm, I guess. Yeah, this is hectic. I played this at this. I'm not sure. There's no indication. Anyways, I like playing it that way. And for that project, that's the only record he released. There was also just a remix he did for this album of Fingernail versions, which features also Global Goon, Flowchart, Bochumwelt, and a few like typical 90s indie. And of course at the same time there was a few remixes by Seafield, so you don't know if it's Mark Clifford or Mark Clifford and Co. This indie band, Wobble You, is remixed by Seafield, Pollination Warfare. That is really, really, really good. Also pretty cheap still. Less easy to find, Nav Katse. I believe that's Japanese band, and then there was a CD of compilation of remixes of them, and then this EP with a remix by Seefeel, one by Mag Paradinas Music and one by Gentle People. And yeah, this is pretty good, but pretty rare. And most recently, as I showed in a video, Flavor Crystals, featuring the last track being the Seafield adjustment of Cetacea. Really, really good. Stoner, shoegaze, whatever. This is really good. And of course, Mark Clifford also has this project, Auto Iax, which is released on Mego Edition in Austria, Germany. And this is more on the noise side of things, like experimental harsh noise, drone. This is really, really good, but much harder to get into. And then, well, there was Seafield was not just Mark Clifford, obviously. So the other guys, Darren Seymour released this album, 1995 on Ash International, an offshoot of Touch Records. Touch Records, which is Mike Harding's label since the early 80s. Mike Harding, who has a band called Drone with Mark Van Un. So let's listen to Orobindo a little bit. This is pure ambient, if I remember correctly. Very, very abstract. Orobindo Involution. So that was kind of it for Darren Seymour. I mean, he was part of other projects which the other members of the band were part of. So first, Scala, which is basically Seafield without Mark Clifford, but with Mark Van Unn. First were these two 7 inches, VDT, Pain and Pleasure, and Tears Triptych. Both of these were released on Too Pure, so return to Seafield's first label. Very good. There's also an EP called Slide, with 2 tracks and 2 remixes, one by Bruce Gilbert from Wire and one by Richard Fearless from Death in Vegas, if I remember correctly. And there was a little more. In '95, Locust released his best album with a single called Penetration on Apollo, which is an offshoot of RNS Records in Belgium. And this track is absolutely fantastic. This is industrial, pop, electronic, I don't know how to describe it. This is absolutely a stunning track. Much different from what we're listening to, but this featured actually Justin Fletcher and Sarah Peacock. So let's get to it. And Sarah Peacock, she was also collaborating every now and then. Zurich, which is Mark Van Unn with DJ Spy Kid, also a friend of the whole Circle family. DJ Spy Kid used to be the editor of Volume magazine, which also released an early Seafield track. So this is Zurich, Mark Clifford and Tony Wilson, Spy Kid, featuring Sarah Peacock, which she's also featured on this Echo Park Razor Kiss, which is Tony Wilson and John Tide, the boss of Low Recording, another great label from that area. And lastly, a record I really like, where Sarah also sings Fuchsia with a great Anthony Ausgang cover. It's a picture disc with the same art, and let's see, yeah. And there's also a 7-inch of this, also with Sarah Peacock, also Anthony Ausgang. And Sarah also was in a band called January. Not too much to my taste. It's good, but it's more pop, so I skipped it. And I guess there's a few. There's also a Peel session that was released last year or 2 years ago of Seafield, and I felt I didn't need it. Like, it was tracks I already knew in versions that were nice, but not as good as the original ones. But on that note, there is also a 4th release for the whole program, an EP of live extended versions of 2 of Seafield's best tracks, and that's going to be a little bit more limited apparently. So that's it. That's a Seafield primer for you, just a little bit in advance of the upcoming reissue program. 2nd album of Seafield, 3rd album, 2 EPs before the 2nd album, and some new with lots of unreleased stuff all around this. So I hope this caught a little bit your attention, and if you're an old school Seafield fan, maybe, I don't know, maybe you learned something there, maybe there was a record you didn't know about there, but yeah, Seafield, a really essential band of the 90s, and that I guess was before it's their time, and we're just hitting the 30-minute mark, so that's it, VC. I hope you're good, and see you later in the comment section, and pre-order Seafield.